These are blatant lies. My question is, do you have no shame?
Incoming Republican Congressman George Santos facing his most contentious interview yet as he tries to explain lies he told about his life while campaigning for Congress.
Look, I agree with what you're saying, and as I stated, and I continue, we can debate my resume and how I worked with firms such as Goldman.
Is it debatable, or is it just
debatable.
false?
No, it's not false at all. It's debatable.
Santos trying to minimize his lies as mere embellishments in an interview with Fox News. His answers getting strong pushback from host Tulsi Gabbard.
It's hard to imagine how they could possibly trust your explanations when you're not really even willing to admit the depth of your deception to them.
And tonight, CNN's K-File uncovering even more of Santos's falsehoods, claiming he attended an elite prep school.
They sent me to a good prep school, which was Horseman Prep in the Bronx. And on my senior year of prep school, unfortunately, my parents fell on hard times. I left school 4 months to graduation.
But a spokesperson for Horace Mann telling CNN there is no evidence Santos ever attended the school, and further fabrications about his family heritage.
We don't carry the Ukrainian last name. For a lot of people who are descendants of World War II refugees or survivors of the Holocaust, a lot of names and paperwork were changed in name of survival. So I don't carry the family last name. That would have been Zabrovsky.
A genealogist previously told CNN there's no sign of Jewish and or Ukrainian heritage and no indication of name changes along the way. But Santos appeared to use the alias Anthony Zabrovsky for fundraising for a pet charity. Santos insisting, despite the controversy, that he intends to serve in Congress.
Now it's going to be incumbent upon me to deliver on those results. And I look forward to serving my district.
House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy remaining silent on the matter, even as fellow incoming GOP House members from New York issued statements criticizing Santos's lack of transparency. The most recent one, Congressman-elect Mike Lawler, urging Santos to cooperate with any investigations and called on him to apologize, calling the whole controversy a distraction. Santos also under scrutiny for how he made his money and how he was able to loan his campaign more than $700,000. Santos telling news outlet Semaphore he earned his money in the capital introduction business and did deal building and specialty consulting for high net worth individuals.
Eva McKen joins us now. So, Eva, in addition to the Justice Department, Congressman-elect Santos has also caught the attention of the Nassau County District Attorney. Tell us about that.
Yeah, he sure has, Pam. The Nassau County District Attorney, Ann Donnelly, who I should note is a Republican, has pledged to get to the bottom of this. She characterized the fabrications as stunning in a statement adding, the residents of Nassau County and other parts of the 3rd District must have an honest and accountable representative in Congress. She says no one is above the law, and if a crime was committed in the county, it will be prosecuted. Multiple law enforcement officers now looking into this matter. Pam?
Eva McKen, thanks so much. And joining us now, former New York Democratic Congressman Steve Israel, who once represented most of the same Long Island district as Santos. He's also the author of a new piece in The Atlantic, How a Perfectly Normal New York Suburb Elected a Con Man. And he currently directs the Cornell Institute of Politics and Global Affairs. Also with us tonight, CNN senior legal analyst Ali Honig, a former assistant U.S. attorney. All right, so Ali, I'm told tonight that federal prosecutors in New York, they are investigating Congressman-elect Santos and his finances. What do you think they'll be looking for, and how does this work with the DA also investigating?
So, Pam, in my experience as a prosecutor, fraud tends to come in batches. It's rare that you see someone just sort of commit a one-off fraud. And when you have someone who's been so willing to tell such outrageous lies, there's a reasonable basis to think he might have lied elsewhere. Now, it is not a federal crime or a state crime to lie to the public when you're running for office. I don't recommend it, but it's not a crime. However, it could be a crime if he obtained any of his money by fraud, and he went from reportedly very little worth to multi-millions of dollars of worth in a very short time. It could be a crime if he made false statements about his financial situation or other material false statements on his financial disclosure forms that have to go in to federal authorities. And it could be a crime if he used these false statements or false corporations in order to get around to evade campaign finance rules. So I think there's a lot of basis for the feds to be involved. And as to your second question, Pam, the feds should be what we call deconflicting with state and local authorities, meaning make sure you're not stepping on each other's toes, make sure that you understand who's looking at what so you avoid any conflict situation.
So, Congressman Israel, how does a federal investigation into Santos' finances now complicate his situation politically even more than all the lies already have?
Well, everything about Mr. Santos has been complicated. He managed to pull the wool over the eyes of an entire congressional district. I represented this district for 16 years, Pam. I chaired the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee for 4 of those years. I can tell you, Long Islanders, they will tolerate disagreement with their member of Congress. They will not tolerate dishonesty. And his dishonesty thrived in a climate of complacency. Nobody thought that this guy could win. The opposition research on him was there. The local media didn't pick it up because they thought it was a tree that fell in the forest. Well, guess what? By the time they picked it up, he won, and the tree is thunderous. He's going to be sworn in on January 3rd. Kevin McCarthy cannot risk having one less Republican vote. He will be sworn in one of the most ironic moments on the floor of the House of Representatives. He will take his oath of office. And immediately after that, that will trigger investigations by the Congressional Ethics Committee and by the Office of Congressional Ethics.
But Ellie, does the fact that federal prosecutors are looking into him and the DA investigation, is there anything that could prevent him from taking office? What else can you tell us about how his position in Congress could impact these investigations?
Yeah, Pam, this is a bit of a blind spot in our legal system. So first of all, you cannot impeach. There is no impeachment of a member of Congress. Even if somebody is charged with the crime, even if a member of Congress is convicted of a crime, that doesn't necessarily get rid of them, kick them out of office. The only legal way this can happen is by expulsion, meaning the House of Representatives itself would have to vote by a 2/3 majority to essentially kick him out. Now, that's not going to happen without at least some bipartisan support, including substantial support from Republicans, who, of course, soon will be the majority. So it's really a political issue as much as a legal one here.
And I want to talk a little bit more to you, Congressman. You just offer so much insight into this because, as we just were talking about, you represented much of the district where George Santos was elected. If you would expand on your intimate knowledge of the district and the voters who live there and how you think he was able to get away with running a campaign based on lies. I know you touched on it with, the media didn't pick up some of the Oppo research, but the bottom line is, I mean, look, let's not forget the culprit here is Santos himself, right?
Well, of course, the culprit is Santos, but I have to say there were some co-conspirators. For example, the Republican Party that nominated Mr. Santos, that put his ideological extremism ahead of any research as to whether he was fit for office. Our democracy is so frayed right now that fundamental questions of fitness and truth are just put in the background as long as you are extreme enough. And so the Republican Party locally, which spans 3 counties on Long Island, nominates this guy knowing nothing about him and frankly, not even caring all that much about him. The second problem is opposition research was done by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. The red flags were there, but we were in a climate, as I said before, of complacency when Mr. Santos's opponent, Robert Zimmerman, tried to share that opposition research. Many people said, what difference does it make? He's not going to win. This is a Democratic district. Joe Biden would have won it by 8 points. We are not going to spend attention and bandwidth investigating this guy when he's going to lose. And because he got away with that, because he was able to perpetrate this fraud on the not only constituents of New York 3, but the American people, he ends up winning.
And when you talk to people in your district, your old district that you used to represent, what are they saying to you about this?
They're just stunned. People say, we just never thought this could happen. Again, it's a very moderate district, Pam, very moderate. People are generally left of center on social issues, right of center on taxes and spending. They kind of land in the center. They didn't believe this could happen because it's never happened before. And I think we have to go way back in the history books, I've not yet found it, to find a level of deceit as deep and as widespread as we saw from Mr. Santos.